I'm Betsy Green, Executive Director of the Georgia Youth Science and Technology Centers. I am so happy to introduce you to our organization and the wonderful work we do. For 31 years, GYSTC has been the leading nonprofit advocate in Georgia for excellence in science, technology, engineering, and math education at the elementary level. We advocate for our hardworking Georgia teachers with ongoing professional development training so they can maintain the highest skill levels to prepare our children for success. We advocate continuously for quality science education for Georgia children and their families with year-round activities for kindergarten through 8th grade students. Our reach is statewide with special focus on those children and communities who are underserved and need us most. We are enthusiastic and we are creative. GYSTC programs are available so entire communities can come together around science-based exploration, education, and fun. Today, I'd like to share one such program we are most proud of, Georgia Discover Camp. As you will see, it's a learning camp with a science twist. Any Georgia student can participate and every Georgia student will enjoy what we have in store. Please take a look.
Good morning. My name is Pamela Parks, and I'm the STEM Support Specialist with the Georgia Youth Science and Technology Center. Welcome to day one of the Discover Georgia camp. We are going to have a carnivorous plant quest this morning. We are going to look at some plants. Now, there's something special about these plants. Can you figure out what it might be? They eat bugs. Now these plants are, well, I'll start out by asking a question. Do you think they make their own food? We can find the answer to that by looking at their color. These plants are all green. Green plants make their own food. So we are going to, they do make their own food, but they supplement it, they get extra vitamins and nitrogen from the bugs. It's kind of like if you decided that you wanted to have pizza, and you had pizza for breakfast, and you had pizza for lunch, and you had pizza for dinner, and you said, Mama, I just want to eat pizza. And your mama's a little worried because you're not getting everything you need to grow big and strong. And so she says, well, let me give you some vitamins. That's kind of what's happening with these plants. They live in soil that's not very, very nutrient rich, and so they need extra. They need like vitamins. And so these bugs act like vitamins would for you, and they help the plants to grow big and strong. So these are carnivorous plants that have an adaptation. An adaptation is something where they have changed something about themselves to live in an environment. So since they couldn't live without some extra vitamins, they made an adaptation to eat bugs. This doesn't happen real quickly. This happens over a long period of time. It can be hundreds of years, it can be thousands of years. The plants just can't go, I think I'll eat bugs, and the next morning they get up and eat bugs. It has to happen slowly over time, and the ones that have the best adaptations for eating the bugs are the ones that will survive. Now, these plants have different ways to capture these bugs, and we're going to take a look at 4 different types of traps for these different carnivorous plants. These are pitcher plants, and I have 2 different species that the State Botanical Garden has loaned me. This one has a hood that sticks straight up. Look at the beautiful veining in there. It's got some red veins on a green background, has a little bit of yellow in there as well. And then we have this one where the hood folds over. If you can see, the hoods come up and fold over. And this one actually has some beautiful flowers starting to form as well. All right, so these are both types of pitcher plants. Pitcher plants use something called a pitfall trap. Now, pitfall traps attract the insects by either color or smell. You know, when Mama or grandma or somebody is baking cookies and you come in the house and you go, oh, that smells so good. And you say, I want one of those cookies. And you go running to find them wherever they are. That's kind of like what this plant does. This plant gives off a smell. It has a liquid inside that gives off a smell. And between the color and the liquids and the smell, the insects are attracted to it. Now the insects will come and they will land on the outside, right here, of this plant. And the liquid is down inside in that little cup in there. And one of two things will happen. Sometimes it's slippery on the outside of the plant and the bug will slip and fall into the water, and then the digestive juice inside the plant, and it will be digestive. It will absorb the nutrients. Or sometimes the liquid inside has kind of like a sleeping effect where it makes the buggy really sleepy and he goes bam and falls inside, and again he gets digested. So this is the first type of trap. It's called a pitfall trap. So I'm going to set these to the side. Another type of trap works kind of like tape. Tape is real sticky and things stick to it. Well, this uses the stickiness to attract insects. It's called a flypaper trap. And flypaper traps, this is a sundew plant, by the way, have these little sticky, almost like suction cups right here on the edges. And the insect will come and it will land on one of these little red sticky pieces, and then it will go, ooh, I'm stuck to it, and it will start wiggling. And as it wiggles and it wiggles, then it touches more of these little red pieces, and it gets stuck even further, and pretty soon the plant knows that it has that insect, and so the leaf starts to curl around that insect, and it digests it just like it does inside the pitfall trap. So this is called a flypaper trap. That's our second kind. The next one is called a bladder trap. Now this bladder trap doesn't capture the insect from the top. It actually uses the roots to capture it. So it captures the insect down here. And the little insects will be down by the roots, and the roots will know there's a bug around, and they will act like a straw and go and suck it on up. And so the insect will be up inside, and this plant will digest it just like the others will. This is called a bladder trap. And then the last one might be the kind that you probably are most familiar with. This is called a snap trap. And this is a mouse trap. And the snap traps kind of work like a mouse trap, where they have something that attracts the prey, and then as soon as they get it, it snaps closed. So these are called snap traps. And this is a Venus flytrap. This Venus flytrap has hinged leaves, and it has little hairs inside each of these leaves. And when the insect comes along and it lands inside, bam, it closes and it gets it. And we'll talk more about this later. Now, one of the things about carnivorous plants is that they're absolutely beautiful plants. And in nature, they're just amazing to look at. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a field trip to the State Botanical Gardens of Georgia, and we're going to speak with Jenny Cruz Sanders, who is their director of gardens there, and she's going to tell us more and show us more about these beautiful plants.
Hi, I'm Jenny Cruz Sanders. I'm the director of the State Botanical Garden of Georgia at the University of Georgia. It's a 313-acre sanctuary, outdoor sanctuary, with 33 acres of cultivated spaces and gardens and 280 acres of natural areas and trails. We're standing in the International Garden of the State Botanical Garden. It has a great story. The International Garden talks about the age of exploration and the role that botanical gardens had in holding botanical diversity. The first botanical gardens were actually medicinal plant gardens where doctors could grow plants that they would use to treat people, and it made sure that they had a steady supply of medicinal plants that they would use in treating their patients. But as explorers moved around the world, they needed places to hold diversity. Today, botanical gardens have a very important role for conservation, and this part of the International Garden at the State Botanical Garden shows endangered plants of our part of the world and how we're working to conserve them. In Georgia, we have more plant species diversity than any other state in the eastern United States. So we have an important role to conserve the many plant species that are in our state. And some of the most important ones are behind me in this pitcher plant bog. The southeastern United States is a biodiversity hotspot for carnivorous plants. That's plants that eat bugs. In these bogs, these particular kinds of bogs, they're wet habitats that water filters through the soil, on top of and underneath the soil. They're often sandy, and there's not a lot of nutrients in the soil. So plants need different kinds of things to grow. I know you've heard that plants need sunlight. That's true. The plants actually use sunlight to make their own sugar. Wouldn't that be awesome if we could make our own sugar? They take sunlight and they make sugar, and they use that sugar to grow. But what's missing in the plant's environment are nutrients. So they're missing the nutrients that form the building blocks for proteins and DNA and other things that plants also need in addition to energy to grow. So since they can't get those nutrients from the soil, they capture for them from the bugs. And in this pitcher plant bog, we have mostly plants that passively capture bugs. They have slippery surfaces on the inside of the leaves that once an insect starts to fall in, it can't crawl back out. And once it's inside of there are enzymes and liquids that digest the bug, and the plant absorbs those nutrients and uses it for those building blocks that it needs to grow. Other pitcher plants, like the purple pitcher plant, are filled with a watery pool inside of the leaf itself. So as the insect lands in that pool, there are chemicals that the leaf releases into the water that reduces the surface tension of the water, or the ability of an insect to walk on top of the water. So they drown, they sort of sink to the bottom. And then there's a whole community of microorganisms and enzymes that digest an insect in a purple pitcher plant. These are mechanisms that have developed over a long period of time to allow these plants to capture insects, absorb the nutrients that the insects carry in their bodies, and then reuse those nutrients in the body of the plant. But carnivorous plants also attract insects for pollination. And so on some of these plants, you'll see the leaf that is really beautifully structured to capture insects, but you'll also see some of the fruits that came from the flowers of these pitcher plants, because they also rely on insects as pollinators. So they can reproduce, produce seeds for the next generation, and colonize new habitats in a bog system. And if you go into your own backyard, you can see many examples of how plants rely on insects for pollination with many different kinds of floral structures. They also grow with other beautiful and important species, including orchids and wildflowers and grasses. And these habitats are also adapted to burn in the southeastern United States. So when we think of pitcher plant bogs, the highest diversity of pitcher plants found in the southeastern United States, They grow in the longleaf pine wiregrass ecosystem that's adapted to burn. So those grasses and all of the leaves that might go dormant in the winter can carry fire through them to keep trees from establishing in the bogs and shading out these plants or sucking up the water that the pitcher plants would need. We're lucky in the southeast because pitcher plant bogs can be found in other places too, but the example behind me is a pretty good example of what you'd find in a coastal plain pitcher plant bog in the southeastern United States. So it's a special habitat where many species have adapted to grow. And we also know that they're disappearing in the landscape. So if they were special and common, we wouldn't be quite so worried about them. But because they're very special and becoming more and more uncommon, and because they house so many important species together in the habitat where the bogs are found, it makes it a high conservation priority. So we work together with partners around the state and our experts here at the Botanical Garden to learn about how to grow these plants so we can put them back in the landscape while we work with land managers to restore the habitat where it naturally occurs. If you'd like to learn more about pitcher plants, a great thing you can do is to visit the State Botanical Garden of Georgia. Right here in Athens, Georgia, the State Botanical Garden is a free, accessible resource to you to come visit and explore both the pitcher plant bog we have here in the International Garden, which has been here for many years and is well established, and it shows other companion species that grow with pitcher plants. Another great location for learning about pitcher plants at the State Botanical Garden is in our children's garden, where we've established a new pitcher plant bog, where especially our youngest visitors can get up close and learn about them. The State Botanical Garden has great resources on our website, and I hope you'll visit our website and learn more about what we're doing to conserve native plants from across Georgia. We have great educational activities on our website as well. And we have wonderful programming. You can come and participate in person to either dissect a pitcher plant or do some discovery in the garden. So I hope you'll connect with us and come to visit soon.
Weren't those plants beautiful? The Botanical Gardens really has a lovely exhibition of carnivorous plants. Now, we talked about the different ways that the plants can trap the bugs, but we didn't talk about what kind of bugs they might eat. So I think we should do that, don't you? I have a stem from a pitcher plant. It looks like it might be one of these down here. And what happens is every winter the pitcher plant leaves die back and they will pull the plant leaves, and then in the spring it gets new plant leaves. So this is a leaf that died last winter, and we're going to open it up and see what kind of bugs might be inside it. So I'm going to take the scissors and I'm just going to cut right down here along the front. Oh, I think I feel something in it. I think I do. And I'm going to spread it open. Oh yeah, we've got some stuff in here. And I'm going to dump it onto the plate. Might need to help a little bit. Maybe open it up just a little bit more. It's getting tight in there because there's lots of stuff. It's coming out. Oh, this is a good one. We picked a really good one, guys. Oh, let's look at some of this stuff. All right. Well, it looks like there's maybe a moth right here. That looks like the outside of a moth wing. That was a really large one that it ate. And then we have some little bitty wings. They're kind of hard to see. Right here, that looks like it might be like from a ladybug-sized beetle. And that looks like the exoskeleton of maybe a moth. And this looks like maybe, yeah, see, that may be the ladybug shell that goes with this. So it was eating, and that looks like some more of the ladybug shell because it's kind of red. So we have some ladybug shell and some wings. We have maybe a wasp or a bee. We have a moth. We have, this looks like the stinger part of the bee. It's got the black with some yellow stripes on it. So that was a really hungry plant, wasn't it? Okay. So we have different things that it can eat. Any kind of bugs it can eat. If it gets a little bigger, it could also eat things like frogs, but our plants here don't get quite that big. What we're going to do now is we're going to find out about how to take care of these plants that are growing here in Georgia and what they need to survive. And from that, I left my office at Lanier Technical College and I traveled back to the State Botanical Gardens and I talked with Mr. Will Rogers about what these plants are going to need to survive. And this is what he had to say.
Hello, I'm Will Rogers, and I'm a science and conservation research professional here at the University of Georgia State Botanical Garden. Today we're going to talk a little bit about a few different species of carnivorous plants. I'm going to talk about how to feed, how to care for them, how they grow, and where they grow. Let's begin with Sarracenia. Sarracenia, a native to the south and southeastern United States, with one species, Sarracenia purpurea, that spans from Florida up into the northeast, the Great Lakes area, and into Canada. This species grows in very nutrient-poor peat and sphagnum bogs. They do obtain their nutrients and produce the minerals they need, much like many other plants, via their root systems and photosynthesis. But because their soil is so nutrient-poor, they've had to evolve additional means to get additional nitrogen and phosphorus. They do this by these modified leaves or traps. The insect arrives on the opening, falls into the pit, and drowns in the plant's digestive acids. Nutrients from this mineralized insect soup are absorbed near the base of the plant via specialized cells. Nepenthes, or the tropical pitcher plant, are not genetically closely related to the American pitcher plant, Sarracenia. They are found half a world away in China, Australia, and the Pacific islands and nations in between. The highest diversity is found on the island of Borneo. They do capture prey in much the same way as their American counterparts. However, these species get huge, so there have been documenting to capture mice, rats, lizards, and frogs. Drosera, or sundews, are found in bogs all around the world. They have these radiating leaves that have tentacles coated in a sticky, glue-like substance. When the insect lands on the leaf, the tentacles excrete more of this glue that pin the insect to the leaf. The leaf will curl around, pinning the insect to the center of the leaf, where after it dies, the plant can absorb nutrients from the carcass. One of the most famous carnivorous plants in the world is the Venus flytrap. Venus flytraps are comprised of a leaf with a trap that has two lobes. The frills here act as a cage once the trap is sprung. The actual trigger for the trap is found within the leaf on each lobe, where 3 hairs are found. Venus flytraps are one of the most popular species for a reason. It has one of the fastest plant actions known to man. This trap can close in 1/3 of a second, and we're going to demonstrate it by feeding it. As you can see, if you stimulate the outside of the leaf, nothing happens. The trapping and triggering mechanisms are not on the outside of the leaf. If you go within the leaf and trigger the hairs, the trap snaps shut. As you can see, the trap has closed. The insect continues to struggle, and over time, in the next 3 to 5 minutes, the trap will close completely and fill with digestive acids. Each leaf closes only 7 times, so each leaf can only have 7 meals. Once the leaf has closed 7 times, it begins to senesce or die away, as you can see with this leaf here. It is very important if you trigger the traps to give it food. If the traps are triggered multiple times, but the plant isn't fed, the plant will die. So if you trigger the trap, be sure to give it a food item. Venus flytraps must have live insects. Once the hairs are triggered, the trap closes, but remember, not completely. You need a live insect to struggle to re-trigger the trapping mechanism. Feeding for Sarracenia is very simple. You simply find your prey item. Here we have another roly-poly, and you just drop it in the leaf. The plant takes care of the rest. When feeding the American carnivorous plants, think crispy food items. Appropriate items include flies, bees, wasps, and spiders. Never feed it anything slimy or gooey such as snails, slugs, and worms. They can actually rot the trap.
Isn't he wonderful? Mr. Will Rogers knows a lot about those carnivorous plants and how to keep them alive. Now, I've always tried to have carnivorous plants at my house, and one thing that I was told is that you should have a mixture of organic peat moss, half organic peat moss and half sand. Now, it's very important that it says organic, because if you get regular peat moss, it has fertilizer in it, and the fertilizer has salts in it, and the salt actually in a couple months will kill the plants. So you find an organic peat moss and mix it half and half with sand in a small container. Put a lot of water in there, because the carnivorous plants, they like wet feet. They don't like to dry out. If they dry out, they die. So you got to keep them pretty wet. Remember, they live in a bog in the natural area. And make sure that it gets 2 hours of sunlight every day. So if you do that, the carnivorous plants have a pretty good chance of living. I know that if you have a really wet area in your yard, like I have an area in my yard where the plants kept dying because it was just so wet. It was a low place in the yard, and the water would run down into it, and it would stay wet. So I've tried actually one of these pitcher plants and put it out in my yard, and it worked. It lived, and it's now a couple feet tall. It gets really tall every year. So if you have a really wet place, there's you an idea. All right, we are going to now do something really fun. We are going to make a model of a Venus flytrap. Now we know that this is what kind of a trap? Snap, snap. It's a snap trap. So we're going to make a model of our Venus flytrap. That's a snap trap. For this, you're going to need some pipe cleaners. I'm going to use green, but you can use any color. Some glue, paper plate, scissors, crayons, pom-poms, craft sticks, googly eyes. If you don't have any googly eyes, you can draw an eye on a piece of paper. That's just fine. And a piece of construction paper. I'm going to use green, but you can use any color. So what we're going to do first is we're going to make the base for the Venus flytrap. So we're going to take our paper plate, and we're going to start coloring it, and we're going to color it green. So this takes a little bit of time, so we're going to talk while we do it. As we make our model, we're going to use the real terms. Look, we've got a bug that likes our plants. Maybe the Venus flytrap the pitcher plant will eat it, do you think? So we're going to color this paper plate all green. Now, the Venus flytrap uses the snap trap, like we said, And it has a hinged leaf, which means that it closes, it folds over like a door has a hinge and it closes. So you notice I'm a science teacher, not an art teacher, and that's okay because it doesn't have to be perfect. It still comes out wonderfully. And we're going to color this all the way around. And we're going to color the sides. And as we do this, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Venus flytrap. So the Venus flytrap has little hairs on the inside that are called trigger hairs. And these trigger hairs, when they're touched the first time, nothing happens. The plant's pretty smart. And if it closes and there's nothing inside it, then the plant has used a whole lot of energy closing, but it hasn't got any food if there's nothing inside it. And so this plant doesn't close on the very first tickle of a trigger hair. It waits, and if there's a second or third trigger, that's when it snaps closed. All right, so I'm continuing to color here. And when it closes, it tries to get that bug all the way inside that plate. Inside the, inside that leaf, not the plate. This is the plate, this is a leaf. It tries to get it inside the leaf. So inside is two things. There is a liquid that's a digestive liquid that will digest that bug. And then there's also an antiseptic liquid, which is like a hand sanitizer, which keeps it clean so that the bug doesn't rot. Because if the bug rots, then that leaf will actually rot. And that's not good at all, is it? So the plant tries to capture that bug where it's all the way inside that leaf, because if part of that bug is hanging out, then the part of the bug that's outside will rot, and that rot will get onto that leaf, and a lot of times it can kill that leaf. So it tries to capture that bug all the way inside it. Each leaf closes about 7 times, and then it's had its lifetime and it dies and it goes away. Okay, so I've pretty much colored the inside, and you're going to color the inside and the outside of that plate, okay? And if you're not done, that's okay, because when we get finished, you can always finish yours later. And I'm going to fold this. Remember, we said it was a hinge leaf. So now look, we've got the beginnings of our Venus flytrap. I'm going to open it back up, and we have a pipe cleaner. I'm going to take this pipe cleaner, and I'm going to cut it in half. And then I'm going to cut each of those halves into 3. And if you're doing your math, you'll know that gives me 6 little pieces. That one's stubborn. There we go. All right. And I'm going to take each of these little pieces, and I'm just going to fold the bottom like this to make L's. And that's all 6 of them. And I'm going to leave those right there for just a minute. Okay. And I'm going to take my green piece of construction paper, and I'm going to cut a strip down the side. And now I'm going to take that strip, and I'm going to cut it into smaller strips, like this. These are going to be the cilia on the Venus flytrap. Cilia are hair-like projections. And you know how on the Venus flytrap I was showing you with my fingers where it closes? The little hairs on the end are called cilia. So I'm going to cut this up. until I get enough to go around the entire outside of that pie plate. And I think I probably do now. All right, now this is the trick. You're going to take a piece of tape, and I'm going to put 3 or 4 of these little cilia onto one piece of tape. That saves a lot of trouble. And then I'm going to tape it to the outside of this plate. See how it stands up on the outside? Okay. All right. Now it takes about 1/3 of a second for this plant to close when a bug's inside. And a lot of people ask, well, how long does it take that bug to get eaten? And that's a really good question. It takes that bug about 7 to 10 days. And there's lots of things that will determine how long it takes the bug to dissolve and be digested. One of them is how big the bug is. The bigger the bug, the longer it takes to digest. That makes sense, right? If you have a big hamburger, it takes you longer to eat it than if you have a little hamburger. Another thing is the temperature. If it's warm outside, that bug gets digested a little faster than if it's cold outside. We're just continuing to put the little cilia on the tape here as I'm talking. Oops, that one stuck to me and not the plate. Here we go. And the last thing that helps determine how long it takes that bug to digest is how many times the leaf is closed. If it's a brand new leaf, it digests the bug more quickly than if it's an old leaf. So those are several things that factor into it. Here we go. Now after 7 to 10 days, what will happen is the Venus flytrap leaf will open back up, and just the hard parts of that bug will be inside, because the soft parts it dissolved and it used it for nitrogen. And either the rain will wash it away, or the wind will blow it away, or just gravity will pull it down. But the bug will fall out, and then the trap will catch another bug. What you don't want to do if you have a Venus flytrap is to tickle that plant and make it close and not have anything inside, because if it doesn't have anything inside, that trap will die. It uses a lot of energy to close, but then it doesn't have any food inside to keep it going. And so the little traps will turn black actually and fall off. And if enough of those fall off, then the whole thing dies. I once had a principal that I gave a beautiful little terrarium to with 3 little Venus flytraps in it. Look, we're almost done. We got one more to go. And he thought it was so much fun to take a little pencil and to tickle the Venus flytraps inside and to have them close. And everybody that came to his office, he showed them how it worked. And I said, "You're going to kill it." But he was just so thrilled to watch it close that he kept doing it. And you know what happened? They all died. All right, so you don't want to do that if you get one. All right, so here we go. We have the outside done, and we have lots of cilia. We have our hinged leaf for our snap trap. And now we had these little pieces that I had you fold. We're going to make our trigger hairs from this. So we're going to take some tape and put it on the little L-shaped part at the bottom, like that. And then we're going to put it inside our Venus flytrap. And it makes a little trigger hair. And I would put 3 on the top and 3 on the bottom. And when you get done, it looks like this. Now, this is fun, but what would be more fun is if we had an insect for this Venus flytrap to eat. So we're going to make one of those. So we're going to take a craft stick, popsicle stick is what we usually call it, and I'm going to take a little bit of glue and 2 pom-poms. I think I'm going to have a blue bug today. And I'm going to put some glue onto this little craft stick right here. And I'm going to put the pom-poms into it and let the glue dry for just a minute. Now, bugs usually have something on their head that sticks up, right? Like aliens, they have antennae. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a little antenna to go on my bug. So I'm going to cut a little piece. I'm going to make a V. That's a crooked V. There we go, that's better. I'm going to turn down the top so that it makes a little antenna. And I'm just going to put that right there in between those 2 pom-poms. So here is our little insect. I'm going to put 2 drops of glue right here on the face of the little insect. And then I'm going to take 2 wiggly eyes. And my insect's kind of small, so I'm going to use some small wiggly eyes. There's 2 small ones. And I'm going to put them right here on my little insect. Isn't he cute? I love the little insect. All right, now this one's kind of wet, so I'm going to move him over here to dry. And here's one that I made earlier. This one looks like a little bee. And what you can do now is you can take your Venus flytrap, and here it is. And remember, this is a hinged leaf with cilia and trigger hairs. And it's a snap trap. You can tell your mom and your grandma, your best friend, all this really good information you learned about the Venus flytrap. And here comes the little bee. Zzz, and it goes on the outside. Does anything happen? Nope. It goes inside. It's running around inside. It's on the cilia. Does anything happen? Nope. Then it comes in here and it touches one of these trigger hairs. Does it snap closed? Nope. Remember, it wants to make sure it wasn't like just a leaf falling or the wind making it move. It wants to make sure it truly does have an insect in there. So here we go. Bam! It touched that second trigger hair and that Venus flytrap closed. So now you can make yourself an insect and a Venus flytrap at home. And look what you have. Won't that be fun? I think that's fun. I kind of like it, and I'm kind of old, so it's fun. You can show that to your mama, your daddy, your friends. I think they would like that. All right. And be sure and use the right scientific words, because if this is a model of a Venus flytrap, we always want to use our right scientific words. Make sure it's a hinged leaf and cilia. And what were these called? Trigger hairs, that's right. And this is a bee, but it's also called its prey. So this is the predator and this is the prey in this one. All right, I'm going to set that down right there. Okay, well that does it for our first day of the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade STEM camp. And we'll see you back here tomorrow at the same time, where you're going to take a visit along the Ohoopee River and look at symbiotic relationships. That's where things help other things, for day 2 of STEM camp. Have a wonderful day. Thank you for joining us.